We're here to tell you in a unified way that I'm declaring a public health and civil preparedness emergency.
We are in constant communication with districts. We have a dedicated communication link to superintendents, and we have staff available all day to answer questions in the hour about their plans on closing schools and whether or not to engage in distance learning.
In our state, large gatherings are banned and the 180-day school requirement has been waived, leading to hundreds of school cancellations.
Not the time to risk sending kids back into a classroom.
Governor Ned Lamont announcing in-person classes will not resume until the fall.
Some of the challenges that we faced when the pandemic began is, I think it was all a time of uncertainty. So we came together on a Sunday morning here, union partners, administration, central office staff, and we said, okay, well, let's plan. But no one knew what we were planning for.
We closed on a Thursday. We were in here on a Friday morning trying to figure out how are we going to be closed from school and still pay our hourly employees. We knew there could be a gap in their paychecks. And I would say for me, going back to those early days of the pandemic, I am really proud of the values that came out in the decisions we made. Our kids came first. Our faculty, our staff, our community, we were going to take care of them, and we were willing to be collaborative and innovative on everything. No stone was going to be left the same way it was.
I was in this role as superintendent in Waterbury less than 2 years when COVID came. That marked a change that no one could have imagined. That was only the beginning. And it was a restructure in the way that we handle things on the district level and on the school level. We didn't know how to provide services virtually. We were just at the beginning of developing our multi-year technology plan, which did include adding computers. When COVID hit, it wasn't only about adding computers. It was, how are you going to fast track that into teaching people how to use it for teaching and learning?
In the beginning of March, I was probably the only superintendent in the state that really wanted to do the Smarter Balance Assessment because I thought we were firing on all cylinders. I thought we were doing phenomenal, and I was really excited for the results that we were going to get that year. But that never happened. And I know we were getting word that the state said, oh, it'll probably be 2 weeks. When I convened my staff, I said, this is going to be longer than 2 weeks. We've never seen anything like this. I got every laptop in the entire district. We were not one-to-one at the time. And I remember between my custodial staff, myself, my assistant super, my central office, we got every laptop cart, we emptied it, we disinfected every laptop, and we handed out 1,800 devices, and then we went one-to-one within 3 days.
We were asking students to do something they had never done before. We're asking families who maybe were still trying to get off to work to help get their students online, to make sure that their students were engaging with their school. Definitely was a difficult challenge, but I think we learned a lot through the pandemic. I think we're better for it. Some of the things that we've learned is that students can't be on a computer all day long. That a computer and the digital content can supplement the actual experiences with the teacher face-to-face, but those experiences matter. We learned that our families need creative ways to engage with us. So we'll always offer a virtual parent-teacher conference option. We benefited from our experiences, and we thank our students and staff for all of their hard work along the way.
In the ARP grant, ESSER ARP grant, we have 48.5 positions built in, and 17 of those are certified staff. So again, that means that these positions are reoccurring positions. We had a really interesting meeting last week. We met with our town leader, our town council chair, our mayor, and they asked the same questions, the question they should be asking. What is the plan with ARP and ESSER when those grant funds are gone? And how are we evaluating program success and making decisions about what either continues or what goes away? And I shared with them the challenge for us is we've seen so much success with the programs we've put in place. We have seen greater levels of academic growth and achievement in the past school year than we've seen in the better part of a decade.
We've added numerous tutors, additional support staff. We've added climate specialists, family outreach staff members.
We put someone in charge of after-school programming. We have a director of SEL, social emotional learning. also the Director of Equity and Inclusion. We've also provided, with this money, we built makerspace areas in both elementary schools and the middle school. We're going to be working hopefully with Sikorsky on some robotics. We have after-school chess programs. So this has allowed us the availability to have staff. We also have a social worker who is a community social worker that, as opposed to before someone's just stationed in a building, if something traumatic happens within district or there's trauma or something that occurs, they can also work in conjunction with our police department if there is a domestic or something that happens at the home.
The kids needed to have, somebody call and check on them. They needed, the therapeutic services. And then once the kids returned to school, it was like, wow, like they really need services. And the mental health spiked. All of a sudden the kids didn't have coping skills. All of a sudden they were having all of these disruptions with teachers and peers because they didn't really know how to communicate or interact, because now you're home, right? And you're in front of a screen, if you're even logging on. We had school avoidance, we had attendance issues, we had communication issues. So it was a lot of mediations, peer conflicts. The mental health needs went through the roof.
A very tangible challenge that we faced coming in post-COVID was something as simple as potty training. Again, doesn't seem like a big deal, but when you have, probably 100, almost 200 3-year-olds that half of them aren't potty trained, it changes the service level of what we're doing in a school. What we heard, that was a universal experience in a lot of our region, that a lot of children coming into that first experience of school, whether it was at 3 or 4 years old, were struggling because they had been at home during the pandemic, and they really had very little socialization. So what we're seeing in terms of the youngest learners is there are gaps in their ability to navigate their first schooling right off the bat.
Because the substantial funding we received allowed us to increase services for our students, those services that our students and families need and are counting on. While we hope to avoid the financial cliff, we know there's going to be a severe service cliff unless ECS gets fully funded.
Yes, we did add staff, and we are cautious because if we do run out of this money, there are some things that are going to have to go. We added counselors to all of the elementary schools. We did not have that in Waterbury. That's a position that I never want us to lose again.
Now, originally people talked about us using them for one-time things, but we knew that our students needed more than that, right? They needed support of additional social workers and really basic things like security guards for our elementary schools. We've never had those before, and we really felt like we came to a time period that we could not ignore that in our neighboring school district. That's just something that was part of doing business in education right now. So we really did try to add things like kindergarten paras. Shouldn't every student have a kindergarten para when you have struggles, when some of your students come in and they're not reading at grade level, and you have students who come into your school district that first language is not English? These are basic things that we spent our ESSER dollars on, and now they're going away.
So when I think about, what do we do if that money, obviously we understand that money has an end date. Those positions can't be absorbed in the general budget. Those are position cuts.
Whenever we're facing budget constraints, we know that we need to look at our staff line. We're a people business. That's where we put our resources. So if I'm facing a budget challenge, it's going to be how many staff members are we going to have to cut?
A lot of times when you have larger numbers to cut, paper clips doesn't cut it. The deeper cuts always go with staffing. And that's the unfortunate thing. So when we're not funded, and you're not funded by large dollar numbers, you're losing bodies, and those are the people who are most in contact with students. When you're cutting those high dollar people, you're cutting your academic return on investment. Those are the ones that we want to keep next to students, and it's unfortunate when we have to make those decisions.
You asked me in the beginning, what are the hard decisions or what are the good decisions when it comes to the budget? We're not talking about good decisions anymore. We're talking about something we've implemented, we've seen progress and growth in, and how do we cut is the question we're asking. That won't lead to a positive outcome.
I think that the student-centered funding is critically important. And when you take a district like Waterbury with the high levels of poverty that we do have, and the high needs that we have, I think that we are ready and poised to be accountable for how we're going to be progressing. But the funding is critically tied in to the resources that you can provide to your children, and our children deserve that.
If I knew that we were going to receive the additional ECS funding, I would immediately begin hiring folks that I've put on hold. I've frozen new hires because I don't want to leave a large unemployment bill with the city, and I also fear what the service drop will be for our students. But if I knew that gap was being filled in with additional ECS dollars through a fully funded formula, I'd post those positions today and I'd get right to hiring.
I don't know who's watching this video, but whoever watched this video, I guarantee there was a teacher in their life that made them who they are, and that's why they're there in the position that they're in.
I think really being wise about this right now, from a state perspective, sets up a legacy moment to talk about how schools should be funded, what we expect from our kids, and how we can build sustainability into the long haul of what we call Connecticut school finance.